Ladies and gentlemen, would you please find your seats? IT, I have a little technical glitch up here. I've lost my screen. For those that might be watching the live streaming, we had some technical problems. We lost video for a period of time. Audio is complete, but we did lose video. Item 4 will be taken off the agenda. It's no longer applicable because of the vote on 3, and we'll enter the public opportunity to speak on council propositions, which will be 5, 6. I don't have any cards on that. Is there anyone that would, but council members want to consider these two items together? Anyone want to separate them? If not, we'll have public.
I'll make a motion. We accept the. Did I do something? The consent agenda.
I'll second that, Mayor.
I have a motion, second, to approve the consent agenda, both items. Discussion. Public discussion. Council discussion.
Mayor.
Somebody, go ahead, Ronnie.
I did send an email in reference to this to get a copy of the previous contractor's pricing on the continuous concrete services. Can I get that? While I was coming up, I just wanted to bring that back up. If I can get a copy of that, please.
You'd like to get a copy of the current contract for the concrete continuing service? Is that what you're requiring, sir?
No, ma'am. The one that I wanted, the email that I sent in, I wanted a copy of the pricing sheet that we had when Underground Inc. was our continuous contract concrete service. Mr. Campbell knows what I'm talking about. Thank you.
I'll get that for you.
Thank you.
Have a motion. Have a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mayor. Ms. Lejeune, or perhaps Mr. Basilak, what is the contract price for our seawall and parallel dock? I was looking through the agenda item and the supporting documents. I was having trouble finding it.
Yes, sir. That number is not in there because the cost for the seawall and dock expansion would not be needed until the applicant actually applies for the permit after approval from council. However, staff did talk with the contractor, and the project is estimated to cost about $15,000, but we do not ask the applicant to put that or provide that information until the council approves this portion of it, and then they can apply for permit.
Okay. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? I believe the buttons are now working. Councilmember Dixon.
I'd like to ask Mr. Destin, what difference does that make on this item? Are you trying to just get an idea?
Yeah, just try to get my mind around it, because it's the first time I'd seen this one.
Understand.
Okay. No further discussion. We'll call for the vote. We have a unanimous yes on the consent agenda items. We'll go to the resolution 1610. It's signature for authority. Mr. Miller, would you read by title?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Resolution 16-10 by title is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Destin authorizing certain financial institutions to amend signature authorization for all present and future financial accounts with the City of Destin, Florida, and providing for an effective date.
Ms. Lejeune?
Yes, Mayor. This is basically a housekeeping item with the former city manager, Greg Casello, retiring. The new signature authorizations must be adopted by council before we can send it to our banking agent. And the signature authority would be as following. Myself, Carice Lejeune, as interim city manager, Bragg Farmer, finance director, Scott Fisher, mayor, Preble Ramswell, mayor pro tem, and Ronaldo Bailey as city clerk.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
I have a motion, second.
I move the council adopt Resolution 1610.
I have a motion.
Second.
And I have a second from Mr. Dixon. Further discussion? We'll call for the vote.
Doesn't like it, Jim. It's dead, Jim.
The vote is unanimous for both consent items. I'm sorry, that was for the resolution 1610. No committee reports, scheduled presentations from the public. Not having any, we'll move to project reports, comments from mayor and council. Mr. Bagby, would you like to speak as each item comes up? I have 2 cards from Mr. Bagby, none from anyone else. If anyone else would like to speak, please get a blue card.
Mayor, may I ask, you have previously called upon the public for an opportunity to speak on council propositions. That was for the remainder of your agenda. And if I misunderstood that, perhaps someone else in the public has as well. We might want to clarify the opportunity for members of the public to speak regarding items.
Okay. Would any member of the public like to speak on any of these items? Please come forward to the podium. By the way, on 13C, that has been removed and will no longer be discussed this evening. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, my name is Gary Troop. I live at 86 Shira Street. And across the street from me, a developer has purchased 2 oversized lots and is proposing to split them into 3 lots. And from what we understand, is planning to build 3 6,000 square foot homes that sleep 36 people each. Each will have only 4 parking spaces to meet code. That's 108 guests and 150 feet of street front with a total number of parking spaces of 12. That's an average of 9 people per car. Not typically what I see living on the street. I see probably about 3 people a car. Occasionally they'll bring a bus in, but most of the time it's individuals. And so these are not residential homes. These are mini hotels and should not be allowed in residential neighborhoods. I think it is a zoning issue. The impacts are significant in regards to parking, traffic, and noise. Some of these are advertised as wedding venues, and they have their wedding and then they have the reception afterward that goes on late into the night. That's commercial use in my book. I don't know how to stop this, but I hope that the approval regarding any splitting of lots is postponed until you figure this out and how to stop this. The quality of life in our area, it's not Old Destin, it's Shira Street and Crystal Beach, but that used to be a great little place with cottages and houses, and now we're just being overrun with these, and it's going to continue unless you guys do something about it. You know, eventually our only choice will be to sell our home and to one of these developers, and they'll build one of those big things, because that's what you're going to have here everywhere, because they make money doing it, and that's what's going to, you know, what drives people. So I would hope that, and I know there's a meeting coming Thursday, and I'll be there, but I think this is probably one of the most important things in front of this council, or we're going to turn into, you know, just a bunch of these McMansions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have three individuals that I think would like to speak on 8A.
Come to the podium, please. Name and address. Are you going to speak for all three or individually?
Yes, sir, they can decide if they want to speak after, I guess. I'm Zane Holsworth at Destin Marathon, 316 Cedar Street. Just want to thank you guys for your support of the 2016 marathon and give you a little update on where we're at 2017. So the 2016 race, we had over 1,500 runners, over 700 from out of the area, from 39 states and 4 countries. They each brought with them an average of 1.8 guests. These out-of-town guests and the money we spent as Destin Marathon locally combined for an estimated economic impact of $615,000 in one weekend. This was a first-year event, and the positive feedback indicates that it can continue to grow. As you know, we're constantly battling areas like Pensacola and South Walton for these high-income visitors. Our event has proven to bring these high-income visitors to the area. Unfortunately, our event in 2016 also brought some traffic delays for our local citizens, so I'm sure you have received some emails about that. So for the 2017 proposal, since traffic delays began around 10 a.m., we proposed for a 2017 event that we would have 98 fully open by 10 a.m. by cutting out the full marathon. We also proposed moving the event from April to November when the occupancy rate is about 23% lower than our previous date. We presented this to the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office. The Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office has stated they will not support the event if it's held on Highway 98 or crosses Highway 98. Due to the north-south geography being very limited here, this would in effect cancel the Destin Marathon, force us either to move it to a different city, different area, or cancel it altogether. We have made extreme concessions to ensure that any delays are minimum and well known ahead of time. As I'm sure you've read in the emails our runners have sent, not only will this event continue to grow and provide another revenue stream for our local economy, we had 522 runners from this county running the race, and they think it's a valued asset for our local citizens. A few of them are here tonight. I'm here to ask you for your support for the 2017 Destin Marathon and to provide that support to the Sheriff's Office and show that our city is committed to all kinds of healthy recreation in the area. Thank you for your time.
Who else would like to speak?
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Rex Stennett, 3837 Misty Way here in Destin. I'm an avid runner, ultramarathoner. I was supporting Zane wholeheartedly because this race was new. It's brand new. It's new to the area. It's sort of like if you can envision the one that was done at Seaside 15 years ago that was almost nothing. You know, those are races that have become classical now, and people call those destination races. They come here for a reason. You know, they come here to see Destin. They come to run, have a good time, spend money, and then they go home and say, hey, let's get another group together next year and go do that again. Support Zane in regards to this race, so basically, hopefully these races can grow in the future. And hey, who knows, maybe we can have some more. Thank you very much.
Could I ask a question? Is there any real thought or opportunity to how this could be done without involving 98? I happened to be caught in that traffic last year.
Well, yeah, I saw you, sir.
And it literally shut 98 down completely.
Yes, sir.
I can understand why the sheriff has great apprehension about allowing this to happen again.
Yes, sir. Let Zane answer that a little bit. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I heard from folks like yourself, many of them, probably not as pleasantly as you expressed it. Yeah, we did give a lot of thought to that, and we actually sent out a survey to people just like that. And it looked like the major traffic delays started around 10 a.m. So that's why we came up with a plan to have the road clear by 10 a.m. So our runners would have about 3 hours to complete a half marathon, which is very reasonable. And then we have an hour to pick up our equipment. We're going to get better at picking up our equipment, picking up our aid stations, and be more forceful about removing runners at the course close time. So that right when that traffic would start to build up, we'd be clear of 98. There just is not a lot of other options to get this distance in and still include Destin or any place that a runner would travel to run. Does that answer your question, sir?
I believe you just said that it cannot be done unless it's on 98.
That's my opinion, sir.
Thank you.
Were you saying they have 3 hours to do a half?
Yeah, so the half marathon would start just before 6 a.m. at 5:45, and our last half marathon runners took about 3 hours and 15 minutes, so that would have them done around 9 a.m.
So would you not do the marathon then? Is that what you're saying?
No, we have made the concession this year that we would not do the marathon or to be off the road by 10 a.m. We would love to do the marathon, but I think that until we can find a workable solution to the traffic,
May I ask another question, or shall I hold? I've done a couple of the halves that have been done in this area, one of them being through the Chamber of Commerce. And I'm not sure what was this year because I wasn't able to do it, but I know they have done some of the back roads in Destin and then down Okaloosa Island. Could you incorporate that route and then maybe something going down into Old 98?
yeah, we have looked at these. The issue we have is we're limited to 28 police officers or sheriff's officers and 5 supervisors. So in order to close the road completely, which is a decision that I'm making, that I want the road closed for 1,500 runners, obviously, we have to have a uniformed officer at each intersection. So we used over 20 officers just in the 1 mile of Santa Rosa Boulevard. So you can see how even in 2 miles, we would easily use up all our officers in those intersections. So yeah, that's an issue.
Okay, thanks.
The considerations that we have are obviously the traffic and traffic safety and that sort of thing. And have you approached the Tourist Development Council?
Yes, we received a sizable amount of money from them last year, and we've already put in our application for next year.
Because part of the problem with the Sheriff's Department is that, you know, these have to come out of existing resources. They're not coming out of a resource that you're providing them.
We paid for every officer.
Do you?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Other than the posse members who donated their time, we made a generous donation to them as well.
okay.
Mr. Dixon?
Yeah, you know, and I know that we're gonna probably get right back on this here in just a few minutes, and I know it's under, Councilmember Morgan's, time to speak, but, you know, if the sheriff's office is saying that they're not going to support this, then I don't even know, what would we be doing up here tonight? I mean, as far as, would we be looking at making a motion to ask the sheriff to support it, or? But if the sheriff doesn't support it, there's not a thing that, you know, especially because it's, you know, leaving Destin in some cases, but there's not a thing that we can do about this thing. If the sheriff has said that he is not going to support it, it's pretty much dead in the water, I think, so.
I'm gonna try.
Huh?
In my opinion, the economic benefits are significant enough for us to give it a try, to ask very politely and kindly to the sheriff's office and respectfully to reconsider, or at least to go into it with an open mind.
Okay, all right.
Thank you very much. Any further comment? If you will, what I was going to do is let Mr. Councilmember Morgan go ahead and take the lead on this. Is there any other comments on this section of the program? Okay.
I understand and appreciate the stance taken by the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office. I know their priority is in public safety, and the traffic congestion that this race brought to Highway 98 back in April was, in Sheriff Ashley's words, unacceptable, and it certainly just jeopardizes the safety that y'all are put in place to protect. However, I do know that the Destin Marathon has made significant modifications to their proposal, one being an earlier start time, also holding the race in November as opposed to April, which is a month that the city of Destin could really use an economic boost coming from a business owner that depends on tourism. November is a brutal month for us, So anything we could do to bolster tourism and the economy in that month, that time of year, is something that, as a business owner, as a councilman, I'm desperate to see. It's much slower time of year than mid-April. And he's also taken the race from a full marathon to a half marathon, which is a very big concession. The marathon in Seaside, and I understand that 30A is not a main thoroughfare like Highway 98 is, but they bring 5,000 people for that marathon, and it is a big event, and it brings a lot of money to their area. Also, and if you could tell from the email, there were wonderful emails that we got, and you could tell that they were all, my wife's a marathon runner, for full disclosure. And yeah, well, the people who run marathons are the type of affluent visitors that I, as a council person, I'm trying to recapture, that in my opinion, I think that we have lost some to the east of us. And it's something I'm looking to recapture. And we owe it to our citizens, we owe it to our businesses, and we owe it to the Destin Marathon and their group of runners to kindly and respectfully ask the Sheriff's Office to keep an open mind and to try to continue a negotiation with the Destin Marathon and to reconsider the denial of the permit. Therefore, I motion to direct city staff to issue a letter to Sheriff Ashley on behalf of the Destin City Council asking his office to reconsider or at least keep open lines of communication to the denial of the permit based on the economic factors that a race of this magnitude brings to our city.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Yeah. Oh, did you get mine? Did you get mine?
Go ahead. No, I did not. I didn't. No, I did not get yours.
Sorry. I'd like, Mr. Ted Paco is here from the Sheriff's Office, and if you would, Captain, if you would, could you tell us what the Sheriff's stance on this is and making sure that we know exactly what's going on? And I think from what I've heard before is that this scenario that's been thrown out there has been put forward to the sheriff to see whether or not he would support this, earlier start time and off the road by 10. And I think the sheriff has basically denied that portion of it. So I just want to, you to fill us in on where we are with that.
Yes, sir. And I applaud Mr. Holster for his efforts. We worked with him for probably 6 months last year trying to come up with multiple alternate routes for this race. Destin Marathon is kind of a misnomer because 95% of this race occurs in the unincorporated portion of Okaloosa County, not the city of Destin. What we experienced in this past year's race is it was taking people up to an hour and a half to travel 5 miles. That's unacceptable. The sheriff, when he arrived at church on Sunday, he started being met with questions. Who's the idiot that approved this? What we found was that the initial comments that Highway 98 is an inappropriate place to run a marathon and shut the roadway down came to pass. What we learned was you have difficulty if an ambulance leaves Destin and goes to Fort Walton Beach Medical Center. Well, now they've got an hour and a half trek to get back to Destin during that time frame. Same problem if a deputy makes an arrest in Destin. Has to travel to the booking facility and then make it back to Destin. Unfortunately, the south end of Okaloosa County, when you shut off Highway 98 on Okaloosa Island, that's the single artery on the south end of the county. The only other way to get around is to drive through the city of Niceville, pay a toll to go over the toll bridge. What we learned from most of the businesses that were complaining to us was people couldn't get to their restaurants. They couldn't get to their businesses during this race. So there was a negative impact, is what we were told. We've received maybe 30 emails in support of the race. The day of the race and the several days following the race, we probably had several hundred wondering why we allowed it to happen.
which is why the sheriff came up with the decision that we will not close Highway 98 again for a marathon.
I'm curious, because I know in several of the races we have in this area, they don't shut the entire road down. It might just be one lane. Is that not a possibility? Or is that is what you did?
Oh, no, it closed down both eastbound lanes. There were suggestions made to do that, and we were told that that was not acceptable. We identified Highway 85, identified 189, identified areas on the Eglin Reservation, identified areas on Santa Rosa Boulevard, running even on the military closed portion. The sheriff supports his military, and a portion of the proceeds from this race went to wounded warriors. You know, by all means, we want the event to happen. Highway 98 is just not an appropriate location for it to take place. We'd even made suggestions on Scenic 98 using the multimodal paths, but those suggestions were not acceptable either.
Are there any parallels between the closure of 98 for the race in November and the close of 98 for the Christmas parade in December? And do they not close down both of the westbound lanes?
Are you talking about within the city of Destin?
Sure.
The difference is when you close down 2 lanes of 98 on Okaloosa Island, there's no alternative route. When you close down 2 lanes for a very small section, it's about, what, 1.5 miles for the Destin Christmas parade, is shut for probably 2 hours, and there's an alternate route where people can take the back roads to get around that. So the big problem is that you're closing down the only artery with no other method to get traffic moving.
Any other questions? We had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Marner?
Okay. Village Baptist Church does a resurrection run every year from the church, takes Old 98 into Walton County and back. Lots of other races and marathons are done using all the connective streets from Airport, Main Street, Beach Drive, Kelly, Calhoun, Mountain, and Azalea. I just, that's what I'm trying to wrap around is, why is 98 the only route when we have plenty of back streets where the less traffic issues? I realize there's a problem of closure, but well, I hate to say this, let's take a funeral procession, for instance, that's coming from McLaughlin Mortuary to Destin, all right? There's the average of maybe 6 deputies, and what they do is once that last car has passed that first intersection, he zips down and closes off another intersection down the road. They do that with maybe 5 or 6 deputies or city police officers, depending on what they're doing. I think it's a great, noble thing they're doing, but I just see all these back streets that are not being used as much in the winter as they would be in the summer, such as 98. So that's why does it have to be 98? Is there just because it's a straight shot, or is it just something that just can't be done?
Please step up to the mic if you don't mind.
Yeah, you.
I've asked for this number of runners that the road be totally closed to traffic. So, and we discussed, it just takes a tremendous amount of deputies to close any residential streets for traffic, because you have basically an infinite number of driveways, side streets. So as we discussed, it took, I think, 21 deputies just on the Santa Rosa Boulevard portion, and it was almost exactly a mile. So if you extrapolate that over a 6-mile route through town, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of deputies, and we discussed that in both Fort Walton and on Scenic 98.
Well, my point being, there's a lot of connectivity between all these back streets, like Airport. That's our alternate route for us locals to get from, Mid-Bay Bridge to Marlar Bridge. There's alternate routes, and I just don't see. And there's also, if you took it say, from Airport Road, went through Kelly down by my house and popped back up on, Cybert, you still have alternate routes for the residents to go through. And closing off 100, I think, how wide is that one section of lane how wide is the westbound lane on 98 on the island? Roughly.
Two lanes.
2 lanes, and so you've got people, not 2 lanes, but there's a width, I think each lane's like 11 or 12 foot long, plus your right-of-ways count too. But I just, I understand where the sheriff's coming from, because even in November, we still get, nowadays, we're more of a year-round resort than we were years ago.
My
Yes, it's a
financial
little
statements
slow.
disagree.
Okay, well, it's a little slower, but we're still getting the tourist base in here in the wintertime. And then you're talking a lot of, like, for instance, you held it on a Sunday morning, I believe, correct?
Correct.
All right, so you got churchgoers, you have people that live in Eglin or live in Navarre that actually come to church in Destin. So, I mean, you've got a lot of traffic issues, and I just don't see, I just can't support closing off 98, and especially with our sheriff, which he knows what he's doing about the roads. I just can't see doing that. I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councilmember Ransford?
Before you leave,
Yeah, go on.
do you want to go ahead, Mr. Destin?
What time in November does the sun come up? Is the issue of starting it earlier?
Yes, sir. So,
The lack of sunlight?
the daylight savings time changes actually that morning that we're proposing, November 1st. So we could actually start the race at 5:45 instead of later. So that it gains us a few minutes. Really based on our surveys and unless the sheriff's deputies saw something different than they discussed with me, the main traffic issues started at 10 a.m. Although we're using 98, traffic flowed fairly freely in the 2 lanes that were provided both directions until 10 a.m.
Did the 10 a.m. start time make it into conversations with the sheriff? Did y'all discuss a stop time? Did that factor in at all into recent discussions?
That's what was proposed. Once it was initially disapproved, then the start times and some other changes were made, changed at the date to a different date. Anytime you shut down Highway 98 for 3 or 4 hours, you're creating a regional traffic problem. The traffic for this race affected Santa Rosa County, it affected Walton County. So it's just a bad location to hold a marathon.
So my follow-up question then to you is it a showstopper to move it off of 98? I mean, would you rather not have it at all if it can't be on 98?
If we could do it someplace like Scenic 98, which is a great place for runners to run, and we can close the road, that would be ideal. But I know the sheriff has personnel limitations, and I completely understand that. He's covering a large area with a small number of people. Unless we can find resources from some other place to close the road, it's going to be very difficult.
Have you explored personnel borrowing from any of the other municipalities or any of the other adjacent counties?
I believe it's discussed, but I'll let you handle that. He asked if we could, we had discussed requesting forces from another sheriff's department.
If it was moved to Scenic 98, it would require Walton County to be involved in it, because Scenic 98 and Destin is a very short stretch.
Right.
The majority of it would end up in Walton County.
Listen, I want this to be able to work. I really, really do. I understand the economic impact. I really do understand the reality of closing down 98. If we can get it off of 98, if you can find the personnel, if you can get Walton County on board, I mean, could it be that we instruct staff to offer up a letter to you and to our sheriff and also to Walton County Sheriff, to where we could possibly get enough personnel that logistically it could be feasible is that something that you would find agreeable to where we can get this thing here? Because I do see it, and I agree with Mr. Morgan, it is an economic boon for what is otherwise very slack time.
Yes, I'd be interested in that. The other issue we face, and you guys have discussed here multiple times tonight, is parking for, this year is 1,500 runners. Next year is probably going to be 2,000 runners. We have a few places that can park that number of people.
What day does November 1st fall on?
What's that, sir?
What day does November 1st fall on this time, your race day?
I believe it's a Sunday.
It's a Sunday.
So,
If I may interject, I don't think we're in a position to redesign the race here. I just think that the point of this was a display of support for these guys to the Sheriff's Department to let them know in the future if they want to re-engage in talks about redesigning the race, be it in the proposed areas you gave them, be it another idea that we may or may not come up with tonight. Simply just show that as a city, we support these guys, and we would like the sheriff to at least, the sheriff's office and Destin Marathon to keep open lines of communication, because we can really use the economic impact.
I have a quick question, Mayor, please. Do we have to have uniformed officers at every location, or can they use volunteers in certain places?
I believe they tried some volunteers at locations during this race, and what they learned was that a lot of times the volunteers are not equipped to deal with the problems that they had. There were motorists that were stopping and basically blessing out the people that were standing there trying to direct traffic. There were some very unhappy people with the traffic problems. The sheriff is more than willing to engage in conversations for alternate routes. That's what we have asked for from the beginning, is something off of the main thoroughfare.
Mr. Morgan, I have you up next. Did you finish your comments?
I did.
Mayor, I don't know if we really need a motion, if we just consensus that we have
I
a city
think
manager.
we have a motion
I know we have
second
a
on the floor.
motion, but it'd save us a little bit do we need a motion to just have a consensus of council for them to
Mr.
try to
Mayor,
work with it?
isn't there a motion on the floor?
Yeah, we have a motion and a
what-
second. I
yeah,
think we
that's
have
what
to
I'm
deal with
asking.
that first.
Can somebody repeat the motion, please? Just
To keep open, I made a motion to keep open lines, or to encourage the Sheriff's Department, one, to reconsider the denial of Destin Marathon's request, and based on the economic factors that a race of this magnitude brings to our city. Yes, and keep lines of communication open with them, which it sounds like you will.
It's that reconsider part that's
It is.
I mean, I don't mind the lines of communication staying open, but I don't think we should go reconsider, but reopen the lines of communication to look at alternate routes.
Yeah. Given the concessions that Destin Marathon's made, changing it to November from April, going from a full marathon to a half marathon, would dictate you would at least have only half the problems. I don't think it's I personally don't think it's too much to ask them to reconsider for the economic benefit that our city will receive from it.
Mr. Foreman? I'm sorry. Yes, it is.
I was at one of my meetings that I attend for the city, and in that group were 3 mayors from other cities in the county, and when the subject came up of 98 and road stoppage on there, they went ballistic. They said it's a regional problem that we've got. It's not something that Destin can decide or not decide, because what we're doing is affecting all these other locations throughout the county. And so I don't think it's just up to us. I think some of these other folks out there that are affected by it need to be invited in too.
Mr. Marler, I still have you on the board. Have you finished? Okay. Further discussion?
I call the question. I move to vote.
We call the question. Please vote yes or no. We have one no. The motion passes.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I will be able to take the information for the motion from the minutes. However, the discussion regarding using the word reconsider, could I get clarification whether or not that's to be part of the letter or not?
It was.
Okay, so it's the original motion then that Council Member Morgan made at the beginning of the discussion is how we should draft the letter.
I stated it twice, so I think I made
Correct, and I
myself clear.
confirm my second.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Morgan, anything else?
Yeah, I did. One more thing, very brief. I had a concerning email from Mr. Alan French about the Indian Bayou Drainage Project and about the removal of oak trees there. I just wanted to get an update from you, please.
We're not going to be removing any oak trees.
Sounds good. Thanks. And if you do, you know, there were some trees cut down on 98, and I know they're just as easily transplanted. So in the event that the city does have to cut down trees, it's check into transplanting them first.
Will do.
Yeah, thanks.
Councilmember Destin?
No comments at this time.
Councilmember Marlowe?
I'm okay tonight, Mayor.
Councilmember Foreman?
Second his motion.
Councilmember Dixon?
I won't be quite as easy, I'm sorry. Been holding off bringing this up, but trying to see whether some of these problems may rectify themselves, but they're only getting worse, and I think that we're going to have to start dealing with them, and I don't have any idea how. But what I'm speaking of is the homeless problem that we have in Destin. And it's been brought up here before, I think, somehow, some way. I do remember some discussion about it, and it's getting very much worse. I've gotten calls from Destin residents that live on Beach Drive there near the churches where basically that's kind of getting to be a hangout. I think they're building a condo right next to the post office. It looks to me like, anyway. Looks like double-decker tents going up in there anyway. And I just don't know what to do with it. I don't have any suggestions. I don't have any ideas. I don't have, anything other than just identifying, I feel like there's a problem. I've driven down the road on Main Street and seeing them laying out there where they're evidently intoxicated or something and walling around with a bicycle on the sidewalk there, and it can't be a good image for our city. I don't know what to do with it. I just threw it out there tonight that I think we're going to need to start addressing it somehow, and I don't know how. But, I'm not, I do have pity for some of these people that are down on their luck or whatever it may be, but we still have an image to uphold as a city. And I think that we've got to do what we can to help people, and I certainly do want to help them the best we can, but some of these cases are, I'm sure, health issues where we have a concentration of people that are homeless in certain areas. I'm sure that we have sanitary issues in these certain spots, and I don't know what to do with it. Even though a property owner may not give direct permission for somebody to be there, I guess unless a property owner tells people that they can't be there and does something legally, I don't know what the sheriff's office can do, but I still say there's still a health issue there, and we really need to somehow try to get a handle on this. If you look at some of the areas where they are using these camps or whatever it may be, there's more trash, and it's just gotten to be out of hand, and we've got to deal with it. It's only getting worse, and you see more of it. So I think what's happening is that the word's getting out. If you come to Destin, they'll leave you alone, and I am seeing more people, not on our city streets, but on the some of the grocery store areas and stuff like that that are panhandling, and we're just gonna keep getting worse and worse unless we address the issue. So I would like to see if we can maybe put together some sort of maybe a blue ribbon panel that can take a look at something like this to make some recommendations for us, to maybe try to help some of the people that are in that shape, and as I said, camping out on somebody else's property really probably isn't good, but anyway, I don't have any suggestions about this, but I'm just saying this is an issue that we really need to address. So, with that, I'll just leave it at that now, and maybe we can, at the next meeting or somewhere down the road, we can maybe put this on the agenda and come back with maybe some decisions that can be where we can start moving forward in a positive manner to try to address the issue.
Mayor, I'd like to chime in on that a little bit, because as a matter of fact, today, I talked to several property owners on the harbor who are having some of the same issues with homeless people panhandling along the harbor where they know the tourists are, and trying to solicitate monies and stuff there also. And they had a couple incidences where it looked like there was, some undesirables that might have been trying to coerce little children and stuff. So I was approached by that today.
I've got pictures of them sleeping on the benches or the picnic tables that we have down there. And that was another thing that I was going to bring up, is there any way that we can get possibly one of the sheriff's deputies to maybe park down there and walk through there every couple of hours or every few hours or a couple times a day or night to try to identify some of this and make sure that we can, make the people move on that are down there. I've gotten complaints about that as well. So if we can, let's just start addressing it and see if we can make it better. It's a big, tall task, and I know it, but we do need to try to work on it. Joe's Bio. We've got a lot of stuff going on in Joe's Bio right now with the purchase, looks like the purchase of this piece of property that we're talking about buying there, and we're getting more and more and more Sea-Doo rentals, and when I say Sea-Doo rentals, Wave Runner rentals, and pontoon boat rentals. What I've noticed lately is that the mouth of Joe's Bio and basically all of Joe's Bio is basically congested, very congested, with people trying to launch their boats or recover their boats after they've been out. And what we have is that people are going through there with, 40-foot boats that are never stop running, that go all the way through that bayou that are basically making it tough for everybody. And I'm not saying that we need to implement a no-wake zone in Indian Bayou or in Joe's Bayou today, but I think we do need to, kind of like the homeless situation, we need to start talking about it. We have a lot of people that live in there that have approached me about that and the fact that their property is getting torn up because people are just running by there in their boats and not paying any attention to what damage they may be doing. So I think it may be time that we start looking at, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of great emails on this one, is look at a no-wake zone in Joe's Bayou. We do have, like I said, our boat launch in there, and there's a lot of things in there that we need to try to make sure that we protect. So that'll be something that I'll put on the agenda for down the road as well. The boardwalk, I think we need to do what we can to check our an hour of seasons here and everything. I had somebody tell me today, a friend of mine, basically they promised me that they had not anything to drink, and they tripped over one of the boards that was loose down there and face planted yesterday. What I'd like for us to do is to go down to that boardwalk and check to see if these boards are loose, or the screws, or the nails, or whatever it is that are there, that we get those taken care of. We have hundreds and hundreds of people, thousands of people that are walking that boardwalk every day and night especially, and we don't need that liability. So please, let's do what we can. I know staff is very busy with everything they got to do, but we really got to take care of this boardwalk and making sure that we have everything like it needs to be, and our season's here upon us, and wish we would have done it a month ago, but here we are. There is some issues there, and we need to take care of them. What we were talking about just a few minutes ago with tree removal, 4th Street in Destin, the people, and I'm sure it's, all has to be done, of course, according to the power company or whatever. 4th Street in Destin was what I consider to be molested with the people taking out trees within the last week here. They've been cutting trees on 4th Street that are 4 foot around. And I don't know whether they came to the city to notify the city that they were doing this. The trees are on the city's right of ways. And I guess they do have the ability and the legality to cut the trees, but man, we're doing everything we can to try to salvage trees. And I wish everybody on council here would ride down 4th Street and look at the stumps from what the trees that have been taken out by, I think it's Buford's Tree Service, or, and I can never pronounce the name, the orange truck, Aspendall, or Aspen, whatever they are. I can never pronounce that name. But they have basically ripped out every tree that is on that street that is, and it looks horrible. It looks horrible. And you know, I know that for a person to cut down a tree on their property, they're supposed to come and notify the city that they're doing it and get a permit to do it. But I don't know if these people are doing, just going through and ripping out the trees or what. Did we know they were working there, or did we issue permits for them to remove all those trees that have been removed?
This is primarily 4th Street you're referring to?
4th Street, that's the only street. I pray to goodness that they're only concentrating on 4th Street, to be honest with you. I hope they don't come down my street. You know, but whatever, but they have absolutely, in my opinion, exposed every power wire that's there. It looked decent before, it's ugly as can be now. And I do understand that they have to have a distance from the power lines and stuff, from the tree branches and everything else, but it is horrible. They did a terrible job, they butchered it, and I'm not happy with it at all. So, can we, yeah.
This staff prepared to comment on it, or should we come back on this issue?
You ask a direct question, if we knew about it. The answer is yes. Excuse me. Didn't know that they were going to take all the trees out. This is a power installation for the Heritage Run pump project to get the three-phase 460 to that lift station that's proposed. We issued a permit to do work in the right-of-way. There was no indication that they were going to cut all the trees down. And that's the first I've heard. Are they all?
It's horrible. Ride down through there and take a look. It is horrible. And I wish we would have known that as council members, so maybe we could made some alternative suggestions, but it's terrible. They did, it's basically, just go look at the stumps and that'll tell you what kind of trees they took out, but I am ashamed of it. Absolutely ashamed of it. So I guess you can tell I'm a little mad about that. So.
Yes.
I think what concerns me most about the tree removal is during our visioning session, our 10-hour marathon, one of the top strategic goals that we identified for the upcoming year or future was preservation of our trees and a stronger tree ordinance. And here we are, apparently the city being responsible for this, or Gulf Power?
That's correct.
Yeah. And that's what's concerning to me, so the tree ordinance stuff.
So basically, tell me what that entails, and I don't mean to keep on here. I know I've said I wasn't going to talk as much this meeting, but I am. But tell me what is involved in adding. Is this adding another wire, or is it going to be something that's going to be terrible to look at from now on, or
no?
Could we have designed that different, or what?
The closest location to the project was Beach Drive, near 4th Street. And what's required is installing three-phase power, 460 volt, which that particular location was the closest to the pump station site. So when we approached Gulf Power to get power to our proposed pump station, they identified that location.
And started cutting gigantic trees down. So, I mean, to just put another wire, are we talking about, or what are we doing there?
Essentially, more wire, a third wire, three-phase wire, to get the 460 volt. Currently, there's only 220 available.
Okay, well, it's too late now. I mean, they're gone. There's nothing we can do about it. They've been working there all week long. I would like for somebody to take a look at this thing, and I hope to never, ever see this again. This is horrible, horrible. And I know what they're doing. They're basically going through there and saying, okay, well, these are going to be in the way, without trying to do anything different, and just started cutting down trees, and it's terrible. It's a terrible way to do business, and it looks terrible, and you know, I hope they are utilizing a little bit more common sense when they go on down towards Benning Drive or whatever it may be. But they have absolutely, in my opinion, destroyed that street. So, thank you.
Is there not a way to require a permit, or is there one, are they supposed to ask now? Is there a way to make it a requirement to, if you're going to be cutting down any foliage, to check with the city? And
They're supposed to. It wasn't part of the permit application. I didn't know they were going to be removing all those trees.
Please go look at that
We
tomorrow
will.
morning, please.
We'll certainly look at that.
So here's where I think the federal government was in the 1970s. Federal government did this kind of stuff all the time, but on much larger, grander scales with their dam projects, and when they do things with building power plants and all sorts of different things. And what we got out of that was we really weren't looking at the federal level at what any of these decisions were doing to the environment. And the outcrop of that was that they passed the NEPA law, which it requires an environmental impact analysis for any decision that the federal government makes. Now, the outcry from that is you've added an extra layer of bureaucracy and time and resources dedicated to every decision, but the good thing is you can catch some of this stuff before. And what I think we're getting at is we may be reaching a point where it may make sense for us as a city, and again, on Thursday, we'll bring it, I think it's important to look at again, you know, should we be looking at whatever the environmental impact or just the tree impact? You know, it's the will of the council. We can narrow it or we can broaden it. But every decision that we're going for, we need to be looking at some of these things before they happen, because it is, I'm not looking forward to going down to 4th Street because it breaks my heart, because I know there were some big ones down there.
One of these trees was about 40 feet tall. So, yeah.
do we have any recourse when things like this happen? I mean, can we force them to come in and plant double what they cut down? I mean, obviously you can't replace a 40-year-old tree, but is there something in place that could serve as you know, what, you know where I'm going?
Right. Unfortunately, power lines and trees have a difficult time coexisting. It's very dangerous to continue to trim a lot of these trees while the power lines essentially bisect the canopies. So when I can't speculate on any anything that we could request from Gulf Power. I can certainly have a conversation with them, but
particularly if it was done without them saying we're going to have to do this, or some sort of heads up. I would think that would be a courtesy, but I don't know. I mean, this isn't my area of expertise. Y'all are, so.
You know, I think that's something probably, again, appropriate for the workshop, because I believe that, you know, if there is something, I think we have the ability to do anything we want, and if it has become the council's prerogative to do our best to make sure these things don't happen, then let's put the force behind it in our comp plan.
I'm done, Mayor. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry it took so long.
Mayor?
I would ask that if this is going to continue, that somehow or another we have these conversations with Gulf Power immediately. Y'all have red tags and things, and I understand, slow them down a little bit, but we ought to get some answers before another tree comes down.
will do.
Mayor, before you start with Mrs. Ramswell, could you give us like 15 seconds for them to change that tape?
Yes, we'll take a 2-minute break, 5-minute break. I've asked Mrs. Lejeune to please look into and talk to any agency she feels necessary to see if we might come up with some suggestions as to how the council might want to address the homeless problem.
Okay.
I've also received some serious complaints, and I understand there's a pretty good development going in above Mountain Drive on the roads back in there that's become a little bit of a tent city as well.
Like I say, they're building condos, I
And
think. So,
I
yeah.
think we're going to have to address it. I know staff has looked into this previously, and it is a difficult situation, but I think there's some method of addressing it, and we'll report back to council if that pleases council members. Councilmember Ramswell, I have several people that want to speak on your subjects. Would you like to go first, or would you like me to call a few audience members?
I'm welcome to let the public speak first.
Okay. I'm sorry, the first one is Gary Troop, which is 12A, but there is no item 12A. I already spoke, sorry. Okay, thank you. 12B, and there's no item 12B. 13. Oh, they may have got it wrong, but it's 13. 13B, Patty Brown.
Hi, I'm Patty Brown, and I live at 86 Shira Street, Destin, Crystal Beach area. I've lived there for 11 years. And if you drive down many of the streets in Crystal Beach, if you go to Shira, you'll see there's a lot of pride of ownership. We spend a lot of money landscaping, putting sod down and leveling our right-of-ways, and we have a real problem there because we're a beach access street. So if we put up signs that say, please do not park on our grass, the city has directed that those signs be taken down because they're not from the city. So I'm sure you guys all got my pictures I sent recently, because we go through this every year where they ruin all of our right-of-ways, they swear at us, they rip our signs down, and they're destroying the property, and they're destroying how the street looks, and we spend a lot of money doing this. We only have limited code enforcement. Joey is wonderful. He does everything he can, but he's one person, and it's a big city. So he comes, he puts warnings on the cars, and they leave, and we get no help whatsoever from the sheriff's department. They have said, we can't do anything about people parked in the right-of-way. So we have a problem, and we need your help. We need signage. We need enforcement. And maybe we can't hire any more people because Joey is only one person. He does a great job, but he can't be there all the time. So I think it's really unfortunate that we have our property destroyed year after year, where at the end of the season, we have nothing left as far as grass. We have huge ruts in the sand, and we have to bring in tractors to level it out and put down sod again. And this goes on over and over and over again. And it's not just parking on our grass. They park between plants. They run over plants. And I know that we're a tourist town, but this is not right. We need to have somebody that looks out for the residents too. We pay the taxes here. And on Shira Street, we have a lot of rental properties with pride of ownership. It's not just the people that live there all the time. So I ask that you really consider some signage, more enforcement to protect the destruction of the landscaping on Shira Street. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Bagby, 13B and A both.
And I don't know what Councilwoman Ramswell is going to do or what she's going to propose, but really I see these two as tied together. One case, one thing I want you to remember, if you have a chance to read it before Thursday, that'd be a good thing. Bennett versus Walton County, which is the wedding house case in Walton County that Walton County won, and it was affirmed in the first DCA. where commercial uses, okay, wedding houses, in the LDC were not allowed in Walton County. And they enforced it, and they got rid of that wedding house. Now, I don't mind people getting married, but there's a difference between people staying in a house and going down to the beach and having a nice little beach wedding, and then maybe having a couple of cocktails, and a house that rocks and rolls for 3 or 4 days because, you know, they start coming in on Wednesday or Thursday, and they start the party, and then they have the bachelor party or whatever party, the groom's party, and then the night of the wedding, they're going till like midnight. That should not be allowed, and it's going on a lot too often in Crystal Beach. And that's not the type of neighborhood that we're supposed to have there. So if you get a chance to read that, because one of the things I think people will tell you is the houses have gotten out of control. And then what happens is the parking gets out of control. Because as was stated, I believe by Mr. Troop, you got a house that sleeps 36 people now, and they've got 4 parking spots. 4. So all those cars are going to park somewhere. They're going to park in Ms. Troop's or Patty's, Ms. Brown's front yard, up and down the street. And I may have a little bit different opinion on right-of-way use than Councilwoman Ramswell. I would say no parking in the right-of-way, period, at least in Crystal Beach, unless it is marked and paved. Even if it is paved with the open pavers that are environmentally friendly, but it's got to be marked. None. Get them off the streets, get them out of the area, and if they violate it, tow them. Authorize the city or the code enforcement to have them towed, because it's not going to get any better. It is not going to get any better, and it's unacceptable as it is now. Yeah. Sure.
Mr. Bagby, and I certainly, you know, understand what you're saying, but you know, you referenced wedding houses. And, you know, I don't think that a house on Shira Street is going to be a wedding house. Let me say this first. And I think it's no different than if they were a bunch of runners that were coming into town that were going to stay at the house. They're not getting married there. You know, they're getting married on the beach or wherever it is they're getting married at, and that's just where they're going to congregate after the wedding. I think what you're referring to is the houses that are actually on the beach where they are set up to deliver that service as far as weddings go. But this is just, it doesn't matter where they're coming from, it's a problem. The weddings have really, in this particular instance, I don't really think this has anything to do with it, no more than it could be a family reunion that are coming to stay there. So I don't think weddings are the issue. I think we're talking about the overcrowding of particular houses, no matter how it is. I do understand what you're saying about the weddings. The weddings are basically the function of a house that's on the beach where they're going to get married at that piece of property or whatever it may be. But we're talking about just the fact that we're getting 20 people to 30 people, ever how many people staying in one house. So that's you know, but I don't understand the wedding thing.
Okay, well, let me help you, because, and that's why I say read the case, because the case referenced at the DCA, at the District Court of Appeals, it referenced houses that are used for family reunions, or houses, you know, where we congregate and we might have a wedding occasionally. These are houses that have a commercial utilization. They are advertised, okay, as the place where you come and you have your reception. You're right, the actual ceremony, Councilmember Dixon, might occur down on the beach, but everything else, every other activity tied to that wedding occurs at that house. And that is a commercial use of a residential property, which you can say is not allowed. And that, so it doesn't matter if they have family reunions, you know, if they're advertising it, that if they're just saying, hey, this is a rental house, come stay in this, that's one thing. People do that. I mean, there's a lot of them out there, and they're out on Holiday Isle, and they're all over this city. But when you specifically market it, advertise it as a venue, as a place where bring, your 40 best friends and y'all rock and roll till midnight. That's not me and my family, extended family, whatever, going on vacation and all staying in the same house. And that's why I say, read the case. It becomes very clear in the rulings, both at the trial court and at the DCA, what we're talking about.
Okay, I just wanted to point my concern.
Yeah.
Jim, I think my question is, I think it's the category, I mean, I think I haven't read the case, so
yeah.
I'm gonna have to speculate a bit, but the reason we're able to regulate it is because they put it out as a commercial use.
Yes.
And here's the thing, I think it's not really the fact that it was the wedding that brought everybody in, it was the fact that the structure exists without the adequate amount of parking. It's too intense. I mean, I've been to some of the ones on Shire Street when people came in town for family reunions, and the raucous was just as significant because the problem was the building sleeps 36 and they've only got 4 parking spaces. Even if they had 9 parking spaces, the question still would remain, do we really want these big structures that are sleeping 36 in the middle of what is otherwise single-family residential parts of Crystal Beach? So I think that comes back to what we want to look at on the comp plan, which is those types. I know we got lots of stuff we got to talk about, and it may have to occur over several workshops, but that's what we're here for. But I think that's where the issue is. It's not whether or not it's weddings or that it's the category, it's the structure itself, and whether or not we should be encouraging more of those to be built in where these folks are trying to live.
Yeah. And my position is you shouldn't. And so on the parking, just to finish up go back and finish up my thought on the parking. And I'm not saying citywide. If you want to do no parking in the right of way citywide, good luck, because I know in some of the older sections, where you have smaller houses, you don't have adequate parking. And we've dealt with people blocking sidewalks, and people parking in rights of way in the drainage swells, which causes the drainage swells to become non-functional and things like that. But in Crystal Beach, that small beach neighborhood that it was originally supposed to be, these monster houses are killing that, and the cars are just making it absolutely unlivable. So I just ask that you look at that. Thank you.
I noticed several folks from Holiday Isle, I was going to say, are trying to jump out of their seats. It looks like one has already jumped out of his seat. I came before this council, seems like about a year ago, with some of the same points you were making, and that's why Hal wound up back here. So I would do anything I can to push that. Weddings are particularly bad, though, because they tend to, at least on Holiday Isle, they may involve 3 or 4 or more houses. We have experienced not the small buses, but the big buses, 2 and 3, bringing people in for these parties. And it pretty much shuts down a residential area. The suit in Walton County, and I understand we have ordinances that are very similar to what Walton County had on their books, but what finally brought Walton County to a head was some of the neighbors filed suit against the county for not enforcing the rules that were already in existence. And Walton County then filed lawsuits against the operators of these wedding chapels, and that's really what they are. They're pure wedding chapels, even if they are in a single-family home. The thing that has bothered me the most is you sleep 30 or 40 people in one of these houses, or whatever type of party you have in them. Those homes were built for single families. The balconies aren't stressed for that kind of crowd on them. There's no fire inspections. There's no requirements that any other type of business would have. And somehow or another, I'll get off my soapbox pretty quick, it's getting late, but somehow or another, I think the city council has got to address this, and maybe we'll find something to do Thursday with it. I believe that's all for this item. Whoop, Guy, sorry. I tried to get past you.
Guy Tadlock, I live at 502 Noriego, and I'd certainly like to echo and confirm what Mr. Bagby's saying about weddings and wedding houses. And we've got at least 4, maybe 5, and it looks like we got one on the way. And, you know, it's one thing in a residential neighborhood to have a house rent to a family reunion or something like that. Quite frankly, we enjoy that. I like to see it. But when you have a house, a wedding house that's set up for weddings, they advertise for weddings, and they do at least 2 a week, sometimes 3. And these things can have 100 to 200 people at them. As Mr. Fisher mentioned, they bus them in. And these buses will run from 5 o'clock in the afternoon to 12 o'clock at night. And then in some cases, the guests do not want to ride the bus, so then they try to park somewhere. So then you got a house, a typical house that may have 5 or 6 parking places, and then you got 30 or 40 cars, and they're going to park somewhere. They park on the right-of-way, they park in other people's driveways. So it is something that we've got to, I think that's very important. I look forward to the comp plan, the workshop, and maybe this is something we can talk about. Also agree with what Mr. Bagby said about parking on the right-of-way. You know, as we work to try to make Destin a more beautiful place with all the landscaping and everything that we do, then to have people kind of disrespect that and park on the right-of-way is just criminal, in my opinion. And I wish, if you don't believe that we've got a problem there, please go out on Holiday Isle, 4th of July, or Memorial Day, or Labor Day, or any of those big holidays. And we've got people that literally will park in between 2 parked cars and pull straight in. In other words, instead of parallel parking, they'll perpendicular park. And again, they're trying to get to the beach, and they think that nobody will care. And I know in talking to the Sheriff's Department, we hate to tow those people because it certainly leaves a bad image of their visit to Destin. But somehow I think that we've got to enforce and keep people from parking just anywhere they can. It's a hazard, especially when you get an area like on the very tip of Holiday Isle, and you get a lot of cars congested in there, and then there's kids running around in between the cars. And I'm afraid that if we don't get a grasp of it, if we don't control it, we're really going to have a bad situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guy.
The TDC has just published the wedding guide for this area, that has, and they're promoting weddings in this area. So to the extent that this is one of the reasons why it's drawing in so many people for that purpose in other places. It seems like we're working against each other on this in a big way, and I just saw it. It was on the table when I attended the last meeting, and they were very proud of the fact that this, I guess, a 1/4 inch to maybe a 1/2 inch guide was promoting weddings here in Okaloosa County and particularly in Destin. So there's one of the problems, is we need to check and see if we're not promoting coming here.
You're off.
That's my comment.
I did not realize the TDC was working against us as well.
What's that?
I didn't realize the TDC was working against us as well on these wedding chapels.
Well, I'm not sure they're intentionally working against us. I think what they're doing is they're promoting various businesses that want to come here, and in all fairness to them, they're doing a good job. And so not always does this meet the needs of our citizens here, particularly on Holiday Isle, I guess, but Crystal Beach also. And the fact is, it's something that we need to look at, and I've just become aware of that, and so I can almost assure you that I will be looking at it.
Great, thank you.
Mayor, if I may. Weddings have become a big business. I think in this area, there's right ways to do them and wrong ways to do them. And I certainly agree with Mr. Bagby and Mr. Tadlock on these mini hotels that do double as wedding chapels. And I'm all for attempting to solve that problem. But I don't necessarily disagree with the TDC promoting weddings, just in the right way. I mean, we may cater 20, 30 weddings this year. We had one on Saturday. In that instance, they had rented out 20 condominium units on the beach near the back porch. And I think that's the right way to do it. They had a room, you know. There's right ways and wrong ways, but.
I think again, like a lot of things on the comp plan, we're not going to solve problems that have already occurred. I mean, we're not going to be able to get rid of the ones that already exist. The TDC should continue to try to get some folks in town to be able to use those so we can get the economic benefit. But a lot of this is, you know, a lot of the horses have already gotten out of the stable. It's our job to try to close the door or apply the tourniquet, so to speak, for some of these problems for the future going forward. So, you know, there is a right way and there is a wrong way, and I think if we can get a handle on it going forward, you know, the ones that already exist, you know, that's just something we're probably going to have to just live with. And as long as there's a mix, I think everybody is okay with that, but we can't just allow the proliferation to just drive all of our single-family homeowners to just want to leave, because it gets pretty hairy down there when those things are fully rocking and rolling.
Quickly.
So again, I'm Gary Troop from 86 Shire. The issue is. Hi, Gary Troop, 86 Shire. The issue is they're running a commercial business in a residential neighborhood. They advertise this as a wedding venue, and they have the reception there that goes on. They hire bands, they hire caterers. This is a business, okay? We're not, you know, going to let people stay and do this because they're breaking the law, okay? I don't really care if that guy bought that house because that's how he's going to pay for it. He's in a residential area, running a business, and it's your job to enforce the rules. It's as simple as that.
And to his point, I think we're splitting hairs on what is commercial and what is just it's the difference between renting your house out to the wedding folks that want to stay. Here, I'm not disagreeing with you. Just give me a second.
Advertising it as a wedding venue. That's a business.
Okay. At the end of the day, though, how is really advertising on Craigslist that you want to bring in short-term rentals into your single-family residence house? The difference is we're all concerned about the impact. And the problem is not that he's making money. I mean, if you rent out your house, you're going to make money off of that. It's just not as intensive as a commercial purpose. I mean, we're splitting hairs over what's really a commercial purpose. It's all about the intensity, and I think that's where we need to stay focused. And I'm with you, man. Let's try to figure it out.
Wedding venue.
On Shire Street.
It, or what if, is there a difference if it just simply said, great place to stay for 1 week?
Yes.
How?
According to the DCA.
I'm sure, but I'm sure there is, but in practicality, judges say all the time.
Mayor, I'd like to hear from Ms. Ramswell since she's, it's her
This
vote
was
first.
Preble's, or Councilwoman Ramswell's issue. I'd like to hear what she has to say. But yes, there is a difference, Councilman, and we are splitting here. Yeah, I understand. Dude, I've spent 10 years in the rental business and 3 years, you know, getting people to come to the rental business. And so I understand the difference, but it is a commercial venture. When that sign goes up and says, this is a wedding venue, read the court case.
No, I don't disagree, but what we're saying is all of it's commercial use to a certain extent, and it's the intensity that everybody is upset about.
Well, it is the intensity, and that word was used in the DCA's ruling, but yes, they're all commercial uses, but some are allowed commercial uses, some are not.
But
a wedding venue, a pure commercial, renting a house is allowed.
Sure.
Renting a house for a wedding venue or reception hall is not allowed in a residential neighborhood.
Okay. again, and I know you guys, it's getting late, and I'm going to yield you the floor in just a second, but at the end of the day, what does it matter if they're having the advertising is what you're, at the end of the day, if I'm renting it out to 36 people and they just happen to want to be there for 7 days or 4 days and still have a good party, and I just turn it and burn it, the same impact to you and your family is the same. So I'm saying, so what I'm saying is, let's try to address it all.
Yeah, but that area is still zoned single family, and if you pack 10 families in that house.
Right, so like I said before, the problem is the structure.
Let's cut this off if I may, and let Ms. Council get down at the end. Doctor, you have to take charge. Hang on 1 second. Go ahead.
I think some of you guys are missing the point, Parker. Some of these
you have to address the mayor, not Mr. Parker.
I think you know as well as I do that some of these properties that we're talking about, these people are not renting them for people to have a wedding. They're renting those homes to wedding companies that are having the wedding. Now, that's the difference. And if you don't call that a business, something's wrong there, guys. I'm sorry. Thank y'all.
I just want to know, how do we, and I'm not trying to muddy the water, I promise you, but how do we keep track of all of this? How could we know exactly what's going on with every house that is a possibility or has the potential to do this? How would we know? How could we govern this? Only thing we could do, I think, is govern the parking issue and maybe the commercial use of something, but we got to know about it before we can ever deal with it. So, you know, there's homes in Destin, I guarantee you, that are like we're talking about Shire Street here, that other streets in Destin are the same way, but we just may not know about those. You know, so I know we can look online and try to figure out every home, but what's to say that the next home next door to these people tomorrow doesn't start the same process? So, I mean, how is it that we can find out which homes are being utilized like this and what? I think the way to deal with it is the parking, is the, you know, not allowing them to park on our right-of-ways and not allowing them to park on the streets and things like that. So that's how we address the issue.
I can give a quick answer.
Go right ahead.
Okay. If you recall, sometime in the past, last year or whenever, we got into the whole issue of code enforcement, and it had to do with the collection of bed taxes and who was registered, who was not registered, and there's where the legal aspects of the use of those residences come into play, is that if they are registering and they're declaring their business and they're paying the bed taxes that go with it, then that's the best way to enforce it. And we had people who, I think even on the staff, who were looking on the websites and going down, and they came up with some number like 150 or 200 or something like that had not registered. And we now knew they were.
And there's another 300 more than that we haven't discovered yet. So.
I'll side a little bit with Mr. Destin on that. If they don't create a problem, there's no ruckus in the neighborhood, you don't know they're there, and yes, they might technically be violating the rules, but who cares? When they start bringing in buses, I have a home down the street from me that I believe last summer held 36 weddings, 1 to 2 a week, every week, all summer, most of them with buses. Fortunately, they do hire a sheriff's deputy to sit out front to try to control their parties. But those are obviously commercial businesses and single-family residents. You can weed them out. There are ways to do it, and I think if you start with the worst, you'll see some correction in the rest. But Councilmember Ramswell, we're taking all of your time. You want to take the floor back?
I'm very glad these topics generated so much interest. This is great, especially this late in the evening. to not be very original, Destin, we have a problem. I mean, we've got some big problems, and they all stem from the single issue of occupancy. Now, what causes that? Multiple things, but one of which, of course, is wedding venues. And there are examples that we were just emailed this week, I believe, from one of the people here in the audience, was homes specifically being built as wedding destination homes, as literally, we are a wedding venue location. And to me, the difference in that is, having your home rented out on a weekly basis is one thing. Having it as a wedding venue, you are not sleeping the number of people, perhaps, you would be if you were just renting, but my gosh, you're playing host to probably triple, quadruple that number. And that's the problem. They're busing them in as a wedding venue. They're far exceeding what the sleeping occupancy is. It's interfering with the neighbors. It's interfering with the tourists. It's interfering with our first responders. It's literally, it's just got an effect that continues and continues and continues. And to sort of pull this all together, because the two topics A and B are obviously related, parking is one of the first manifestations that we're seeing, obviously. And, as was already pointed out earlier, these homes have 4 parking spaces. 4 parking spaces is not suitable for a home that sleeps 36. As I brought out this time last year, I brought it out in 2014 this time, I brought it out in 2015, and now here I am bringing it out once again in 2016, because the problem hadn't gotten any better. It's gotten worse. And I'm so thrilled that we've gotten the registration process going. I think that's going to be a help. But again, once they're registered, do we have the ability to go and check up on them? Are we attacking the issues that come as a result of these rentals? No, because it's not our staff's fault. It's just the sheer numbers. And I think a lot of it has to do with our code and not having enough teeth. I think we've got loopholes in the code. And I think it's also, from what I'm being told from staff, is that it's a matter of, well, it just doesn't say anything about that. We never anticipated a home that would have more than 4 bedrooms. Well, guess what? They're building 7 within, I believe, where's my notes? 7 houses that sleep 36 people with 9 bedrooms in a 1-block radius off Shira. That's insane. And I'm sorry, I encourage tourism as much as the next person, but we have got to do something to nip this in the bud. Y'all were laughing partially when I talked earlier about some of the Bay Estates and making 2 lots and 3 lots. That's what these folks are already doing. They're doing it in Crystal Beach. They're doing it, I think, in Holiday Isle. So these problems are already manifesting themselves, and they're already significantly impacting everybody, not just the residents, but everybody that comes through Destin. And we simply must do something about it. I don't know, Mr. Warren, if we have the photos that were emailed that y'all could show up.
Which ones do you want to start with?
We can just start showing them, because I did a similar show to this last year. This is what people are having to deal with.
You want me just to keep going? I think
Yeah,
there are a
just
couple
keep
more.
going. I think they, for the most part, speak for themselves. This is a porta potty that was put in on a lot that, guess what? Everybody's using on their way back and forth from the beach. It's now the public restroom across from somebody's home in a residential community. Blocking sidewalks, blocking fire hydrants, blocking driveways, running over, I mean, really, this picture almost says it all.
That's the last of them.
And then there's another one I got this afternoon that shows one of the homes that's currently being built over there, literally advertising itself as the wedding venue. Now, keep in mind, when you look, this whole area is zoned Crystal Beach neighborhood. It says a maximum of, this is our own Chapter 1 Future Land Use Element Comp Plan 2020. 6 dwellings unit per gross residential acres. It says commercial hotels, motels, bed and breakfast establishments, or other commercial transient living accommodations shall not be allowed on any property designated CBN, which is Crystal Beach neighborhood. I think the key word there is then you go, well, wait a minute, is this commercial, is it not? Well, then you go back and you can explicitly look at what they consider to be commercial uses, and wedding venues are not one of the allowed uses. It says that supportive non-residential uses are strictly limited to places of worship, parks, playgrounds, community buildings, and similar public service facilities that serve the residents of the area. That to me doesn't sound like a wedding venue. And I have to disagree with Mr. Destin. Any place that is advertising themselves as a wedding venue, that's not a home in a single-family residential neighborhood. And that's part of the problem. You look at the parking issues. What I've been told is that we're not allowed to tow, and perhaps code enforcement can shed some light on this, but my understanding is that the city can't tow or ticket because there are no parking signs up there, and that ones that residents have put up have been removed. So how do we fix this? Comp plan, LDC, I don't care, something, please, perhaps you guys can fill us in. But aside from this, you look at our own Code of Ordinances, which is actually a mirror of the 2015 Florida statutes. It says in multiple places there about stopping, standing, or parking in prohibited and specified places. No parking on a sidewalk is one of them. No parking in front of a public or private driveway. No parking within 15 feet of a fire hydrant. No parking within 20 feet of a crosswalk or an intersection. No parking within 30 feet of a stop sign. And we have all those violations just in these pictures you've seen tonight. And even further, it says other prohibited parking. This is section 19.5-54. Prohibited parking. No person shall park on any area not intended for vehicular traffic, whether officially signed or not. And so, to me, I don't know why we can't ticket. I don't know why we can't tow. We've got to figure out a way to do so. And so, Joey or whomever, I would love to hear, or city manager, your input.
Yes. As you just described, this is an incredibly complex issue, and some of it has to do with what's in the code and having or not having teeth in the code to enforce. What you're looking up there, I rode down Crystal Beach area on Memorial Day weekend, and I did experience, and I saw all of that. I've spoken with staff, and Joey was able to give me a report of exactly how many vehicles in the area that he gave warnings to. Some he did give violation notices to for what you're talking about, like blocking a sidewalk or parking partially into the street. So where staff is able to give those violation notices, we are. As far as towing is concerned, you do have to have proper signage in order to tow a vehicle. We've put together a small internal task force. David Baslek and Joey, and working with some public services staff, are right now doing some research for me. We're trying to find out the cost of the proper Florida state statute signage that can go in right-of-way that will deter some of these. With the proper signage, we can even ask the sheriff's office to then ticket and, if need be, tow those vehicles. But the proper signage has to be there. Once they have the signage costs that was going to be, I've asked staff to put together a draft diagram of where the statute says we can put that signage, but going forward, we would then like to be able to communicate with the individual neighborhoods to make sure that all the residents in that neighborhood are okay with us putting the signs where we would propose. So that's one way that we can help to deter that. All the other issues that you're referring to, I do believe, are better suited for a workshop discussion on June the 9th.
What about the violations that say no signage required?
Ma'am, I do have an approximation numbers for you. I was able to get it by COB today. If we go for the first slide. Right here is 3161949. This right here governs Florida state statutes under parking, which could help, law enforcement assist me. I'm not going to go into that because that falls under the law enforcement and jurisdiction and whether or not they'd be able to assist or not. And that also goes on to their manpower. Our code reads under section 19553, which will govern under Alpha 2 India at any place where official signs prohibit parking. So therefore, we're going to have to mark these right-of-ways. Next. This is our short-term rental code under section 613-08. And it states that we did put in place to govern the short-term rentals. Vehicles shall not be within the right-of-way, including grassy area / unimproved portion areas. And having said that, you go back to the Florida state statute, law enforcement, nor code enforcement or parking enforcement specialist can lawfully issue a uniform traffic citation or parking citation. So that's where, that's where, under the Florida state statute and under our own code, law enforcement or a parking enforcement specialist are not legally have the authority to write a uniform traffic citation or parking citation. So let him explain this.
Okay, what he means is that under state law, there's a uniform traffic citation that then brings you to county court, and that can only be issued under certain circumstances by the right personnel. What the city can do at the local level under current codes is the city can issue a notice, basically a city citation, which is a civil fine that then itself can go to county court, but it's its own animal that is different than a uniform traffic citation. And when Mr. Forgione and I discussed this issue earlier this year, he asked me, under our short-term rental regulations where it says vehicles shall not be within the right-of-way, in my opinion, what we should do in order to begin enforcing that, I told him at that time that it was in my opinion that we need to place signs in those rights-of-way areas so that we weren't ticketing vehicles where there wasn't a sign that said you can't park there. So that kind of explains where we went with the topic before tonight.
Sir?
Well,
This is about this.
But I personally think that if we can't give a uniform traffic citation, then we probably ought to look at also having the ability to tow the vehicles, because that really gets people's attention. If their vehicle gets towed and they know it's going to say it's a tow-away zone, then they're not going to leave their car there because nobody wants to struggle for the next 3 hours trying to get their car back from a tow place.
Just so you have some numbers, and having said that, in January 1, in the Crystal Beach area alone, 2016, I've written almost 273 parking violations, and that's including citations and my
warnings. I don't have the total numbers as far as how many was in the right-of-ways, which was pretty extensive. I've written about 80 citations in that time frame. So we were able to pinpoint on the map, if you look at it, under our citizen serve, you can see where the majority of our violations begin. Right here you have Mark Street, and you're working over to Hutchison. So you see my concentration of where I'm having my citation problems. At first, I just did a brief to see how much it would cost for that area and how much signage we would need. And having said that, my numbers I came up with just on that, we're going to need approximately 60 signs. That's approximate in the right-of-way. Could be more, could be a little less. That amount comes out for 60 signs, $4,095. That's an approximate dollar amount. So then I went and even further, me and Dave talked about it, let's do all of Crystal Beach. It's a lot bigger area, and we have a total amount of 222 signs, which brings up the dollar amount of approximately $15,284. That's approximate. It could be more, could be less. We didn't include the Clipper Cove and Ocean View. They're pretty strict on their own covenants, and right now Ocean View is pretty, enforcing their own guidelines. But if we was to add right-of-way signs in there, we're talking about another 80, which will bring you up to around 21,000, just for Crystal Beach. That's more or less.
What about Holiday Isle?
Well, Holiday Isle, my parking is not as stringent. Majority of my complaints that I have, if you look it on the maps and if you look it up on the research, are Crystal Beach. Crystal Beach is my most vigorous place that I'm at.
Yeah, just tell me when to stop. Okay.
That right there is in between Mark Street and Chiron. That one little strip.
So I think one of the problems we're facing that would be helped with the signage is the fact that a lot of these, the majority of these folks are here on vacation, they're tourists. They don't care if they get a parking ticket or a violation. They're going to crumple it up, throw it away, and keep doing the same thing. So that's why I think signage is going to help, because that's going to give us, hopefully, the authority to remove these vehicles. The other concern I have is knowing that fire hydrants are being blocked and that we're got cars all the way to the stop signs and to intersections. Is that not a situation where we can tow?
In order for it to be towed, it has to be by statute, legally, by statute, exactly, what per statute states.
So Florida statute says that is, it's mandated by Florida statutes. Can't we do it?
Could we do it? Yes, ma'am.
My next question is, why aren't we?
We can't enforce the Florida statute. No, what I'm saying is, for us to put that sign up, it has to be by statute. The wording has to be just right, all that.
At fire hydrants and intersections?
Well, fire hydrants and intersections, that's different. I do enforce that. I'll enforce that. That's not including the citizen contacts, those numbers. I've also made probably around 100.
Oh, I know. You've done an outstanding job.
Yeah.
This problem's bigger than you or I or anybody sitting in this room. It's huge, and we've all got to work together to get this resolved.
Me personally, I just recommend that. I also did up this right here. This is pretty much what it would look like. If you look, those are arrow signs, just to kind of give you an idea of where they would need to be placed. Your concentrations would be around your intersections, and then they'd have to be strategically placed so many feet. Some of the residents will have signs in their front yards. So
I would ask we've got several homeowners here. would y'all like a sign in your front yard if it's gonna prevent people parking in the yard? I'm seeing nods.
By front yard, you really mean the signs will be in the right of way, not
In the
in
right of
not
way,
on their
in the front
property.
yard, yes.
Well, I think we see the direction we need to go, on top of the fact that we've just got to get more teeth and more guidelines and written into the comp plan, because, you know, when you add this, when you factor in the fact that we're gonna have 7 9-bedroom homes that sleep 36 in a 1-block radius, we've got, and we don't have the authority to do anything, we gotta give ourselves the authority to do something, and that's comp plan, correct? Land Development Code, everywhere possible.
And Ms. Ramswell, despite, I think maybe if everybody thought I was saying something and that means I didn't say it right, I still think I'm on your side. I really do. And I do agree with Jim. I think we've got two-pronged problems here. One, the ones that already exist, and two, stopping new ones from being built. I think to a certain extent, they have no appropriateness because they only purpose, there's no single family that needs a 9-bedroom house. They're not gonna, how big is your family? We're not bringing in the Osmonds. That's not happening. And that's a good dated reference. You didn't think I was old enough to know who they were. But what I'm saying is, they are for a commercial purpose by their very building structure. And so if we can curtail them from being placed in the middle of your residential neighborhood on a going forward basis, that'll work to alleviate that problem, and that needs to get done in the comp plan.
So, with all that's been said and knowing that we need to tackle some things in comp plan workshop and other venues, can I make a motion to move forward with signs? Does that need to come back in a more formal discussion? What is the guidance here?
I'll second it if you want to ask for him to get some numbers on signage. And then I think it's probably appropriate for Ms. Lejeune to find out before we start cramming them in people's yards whether or not we really know that they're going to be for it. Because I know we got a lot of nods, but that makes me nervous to just plow ahead with it.
If I have a preference, it would be to direct staff to bring back to the next meeting or the next meeting that we have the information for, a agenda item that summarizes all the information that Joey gave you tonight, along with the proposal for the signage. If the council wants staff to go forward with that, my recommendation would be to allow staff to then have neighborhood meeting to understand how many residents really would be okay with us putting signs in front of their house in the right-of-ways.
Absolutely, I so direct if necessary.
I got a question about that.
Mr. Marler, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things, actually maybe three. One, everybody knows who I work for, so I wanted to get the parking Nazi thing out of the way because this is relevant. There was something posted about parking Nazis. We're actually doing that to keep our employees from parking on on the property. They have to park elsewhere so the customers can park there. But that's another issue, but it goes with this. I was tasked with, part of my job is to take care of the area in the village and the parking areas, and I'm tasked with putting out legal, no parking anytime signs, fire lanes and stuff like that. The problem that exists is they don't care. They don't read them. They move them. They run over them. They do all that kind of stuff. My idea is the signs are great. I think we should put the signs, but is there any way short term, like right now, I hate to put Lance in this position too. We did this at the elementary school. We put little white 4x4s in the ground in the right of way to keep the parents from parking in the right of way down Kelly Street, so they would send the kids to the proper area to get to unload and unload. Well, the cars have to hit it or move it, and if they're buried 3 or 4 foot in the ground, they're not going to park. Yeah, but there's going to be some damage to the vehicles, is my point. But I mean, is that workable as a short-term solution is what I'm thinking that we could, I mean, we have an issue. Can we legally do that, or do we have to have the signs first? It's our right-of-way, and if the residents don't mind a little white picket fence for a little while.
That sounds like a personal injury lawsuit on its way to your door in a hurry.
That's
so-
why I said, is it legal or not?
Right. I would recommend against it.
Okay, well, that's good then. All right, that was mine.
Mr. Dixon?
I just wanted to say that if we're going to have, neighborhood meetings, of course, the owners of these homes that are being rented out are going to be there, and of course, they're going to be arguing the fact that they don't want these signs, so I just want to make sure that we take that in consideration, so.
If I may comment, that's exactly why we would want to get the comments back from the neighborhoods. And if it is a case where you have 10 residents who do not want signs and 2 residents that do, then the council would need to decide whether or not the city wants to take that responsibility to put signage in a neighborhood where the majority of the residents don't want it.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question/comment. At what point do we make a decision to say, look, we want to resolve these parking problems, and the way to do it is to put up no parking signs? I mean, it's causing a problem not only for residents, but tourists and first responders, fire trucks, can they get down the road? Can we make a decision like that? Is it totally inadvisable? Or, I mean, you put them on one street, well, they may not park that street, but guess what? Then suddenly they're all going to move over to the next street and will be ongoing. Is it better just to say, let's put them up, it's in the best interest?
I'm not a parking czar, but, I mean, you can do it either way. You can either just go my preference is, when I told Joey that a few months ago, is just go and sign the whole neighborhood, and then just take phone calls from angry residents. But overall though, I think that it's going to be more effective, and deterrence is going to be a lot more profound if you go ahead and sign everything, and then the understanding that there's going to be some fallout from it.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I know I don't come up on your machine. To back up what Scott has had to say there, to whom are you going to delegate your regulatory responsibilities and authority? As hard as those decisions are, they rest with you.
Are you essentially saying, are we allowing the citizens to make a decision
Now,
that
yeah,
we
I don't think you delegate it. I'd like to work that side of that case on an equal protection due process perspective. So, I'd urge you.
I think we're agreeing on something.
Yeah, we agree every time you agree with me.
Oh, touche.
And I can't remember any time you didn't. But I believe you establish your regulations and then you evenly apply them. And where they're placed in the city's right-of-way is the city council's determination, not someone else. Thanks.
Sounds like it's good advice. Do you want to make a motion tonight, or shall we get to the Thursday meeting and talk about this in its entirety?
I think where it's going to rest with you is the financing and manpower. Your administration's charged with the application of the regulations. So it simply comes to you to budget and authorize.
Yeah. I'm assuming with the proper signage, though, the sheriff's department would also be obligated to enforce these parking ordinances. Mr. Foreman, go ahead.
To make our life more complicated, these cars, once you put the no parking signs up there, and these people come along and they read no parking, and then they decide they have to go somewhere else to park, where are they going to go to park? Somewhere else.
And our parking meters that we're going to place along Old
That's
98.
what I was going to do. But what I'm saying is that we're only solving half the problem here. If you chase them down the road, then they're gonna park in somebody else's yard that doesn't have a sign. And so at some point in time, you gotta come to grips with the whole problem, and the whole problem is that we need to identify areas where people can park. We're not gonna stop them from coming here. I don't think that's possible. But I think at the same time, you got to realize that human nature being what it is, people are going to park somewhere else. And that's also part of this regulation. We've got to write a whole regulation, not a half a regulation.
Mr. Mayor, did you want Captain Pico to address that question?
Yes.
We've had this discussion probably many times over the last 10 or 15 years. We can put all the signs up we want. It comes down to manpower. If I write or one of the deputies writes a parking ticket in the city of Destin, it's a $30 violation. Ms. Ramswell pointed out that a lot of the people from out of town, they're going to wad that citation up and they're going to throw it in the garbage. There's no mechanism to go after them for not paying that ticket. By the time the deputy goes and writes the citation, a supervisor places it on a transmittal. They've got to run the information to identify who the owner of the car is. Then it goes to the records division. Records then has to transmit that ticket to the clerk's office. By the time all that's done, you've spent more than $30. What's been recommended to the last 3 city managers is adopt a system kind of like Tallahassee has. They've got roving patrols or roving tow companies that basically they go around, they remove the vehicle, and then it kind of takes your city code enforcement out of the issue. It takes the sheriff's office out of the issue. That individual deals directly with that tow company. But what it comes down to is, do you want to upset the people that are coming to visit because now they've got a $120 or $150 tow bill for illegally parking?
We want to make our residents happy, which, you know, they're the ones that are here.
And again, I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, sure. No, I get your point completely. That's where I was headed too, is who can we empower to rove and just tow them rather than having to ticket and cite?
It has to be addressed in your ordinance, and you have to set up the ordinance that allows for that. Right now, the ordinance does not allow for that.
Yeah. And the signage would have to be very different from the signage we were discussing earlier, correct? I think Thursday night is a good idea.
We can't vote on anything Thursday. Should we direct staff to look into drafting an ordinance that would allow us to do such? I'm seeing eyes from city manager. Please weigh in.
I'm thinking that the meeting on Thursday night is going to flesh out all of these items that you want then staff to go back and research and bring information to you. If this is something that you want looked at and you discuss it on Thursday, staff can do the research on this type of system and then bring it back at another another council meeting in order for you then to vote on it.
We're speaking. Okay. Succinctly, okay.
That sounds like a plan, but Thursday's primarily going to be the land use, and this is more of a little different animal. Could we just direct staff to, you've got a pretty good idea how council feels about this, direct staff to look into the Tallahassee or other ordinances that might be applicable and bring back, and without spending too much time on this Thursday?
Yes, sir. If you prefer, we can just bring back as an agenda item maybe the Tallahassee ordinance as a possible system to adopt here We can bring it back as a discussion item, or we could bring it back as an agenda item for motion and vote. Which would the council prefer?
I think an agenda item, motion and vote.
Yes, sir.
Any
Does that need to
disagreement?
come in the form of a motion? No. Mr. Miller, does that need to come in the form of a motion?
You've accomplished what you wanted.
Fantastic.
Moving right along. No, you've had 4 times. You think you're a city council member or something. Go ahead, get up here.
I'll wait till public speaking at the end.
Can I throw this?
That might be till.
But and this falls into you ask an engineer for a solution to a problem, you get an engineering solution, and you ask a lawyer, you get a legal solution. I have always been supportive of the towing, and if you remember, that's what I mentioned when I came up here. The signage requirement is different, and I would ask the attorneys to look at to see, and use Crystal Beach as an example. Can you put just one sign at the entrance to every section of Crystal Beach, i.e. coming from Walton County, coming off of 98, saying, because you have to put the name of the tow company and how to contact to get your car and all this other stuff, as opposed to the signage, the no parking signage, that one of the things we don't want are 500 no parking signs in Crystal Beach, because you won't keep them straight, and you're a great guy, okay? But you won't keep them straight, you won't keep them clean, you won't keep them, heck, the poles out there now. Go look at the no parking signs that we have, that we installed down Scenic 98. So please look at just a towing.
I think without belaboring that, we've already tried that on Holiday Isle. I think the sheriff's department has told us that the sign must be visible from each vehicle that is towed. You cannot put a single sign up. You have to have the signage up and down. I don't mean to speak for the sheriff's department. Somebody like to?
That's because we don't have an ordinance in the city that says there is no parking on right-of-way allowed. Any vehicle will be towed. And that's part of and then you say that coming into the city, you say that going out of the city, and all. That's the difference.
If that'll work, I'm sure glad I encouraged you to speak. Thank you. He's going to throw something at me in a minute. Can we quickly move on to Mr. Braden?
Boy, yeah, Mayor, I got a list here that's probably take us past midnight and into Tuesday. Oh, I'm sorry.
Did I cut you off too quick?
Yeah, and it just read stuff. It would help if my mic was on. Mr. Bailey, I apologize. I just wanted to follow up on first of all, welcome to our new city manager. Hope it's been a fun evening. We're getting close to our regular standard time. I wanted to follow up. Mr. Walter Wu had come here a couple meetings ago, and he was concerned about the flooding over, I'm not sure which subdivision is, but it's off Kokomo from Four Prong Lake. And I was just wondering if there had been any follow-up on that. He said it had to do with the pumping issues, and especially with all the rain we've had lately, I was just wondering if there was any insight or if it's something that maybe y'all can just report back.
At the time, we were dealing with a high water table. Up until the last couple days, the water table has seemed to go down. There's still certain areas in Destiny that are connected to the lake that are still holding water because of the high water table. There's been no resolution. They're both private lakes. Very little the city can do. I have been discussing some of the issues with the association and the county to see if there is any long-term solution that we can look at. It's a difficult situation. It's a closed basin. The only way for the water to get out of those lakes is to flood over the street at this time. We are connected hydraulically with a storm system that that will pop off into the parking lot of the crab trap, and which you have heavy erosion when that happens to the beach. So to make a long story short, we're still talking about a long-term solution, but no resolution at this time.
Okay, thank you so much. And then the last thing I had was, I know a couple meetings ago, Councilman Destin had brought up the pool issue, and I think staff had been directed to have conversations or look into potential, I was just wondering if that was ongoing and if there was a time for it to come back, or maybe I misunderstood the direction.
I might be able to, I think I know where it stands for at least where the process is. I know that the Arts Foundation is developing an RFP, request for proposals, for what to do with the pool, and I think everybody's just sort of holding in a holding pattern for the moment until we get those parameters released from the foundation, at which time then I think a lot of the melding of the minds will occur between us and any of the members of the Fitness Foundation. And that's I think where it sits right now, and unless they have more information, but I think it's just everybody's holding, waiting for it. What I've heard from the Arts Foundation is it should be coming out, the parameters should be coming out in the next month or two.
Great, that's all I have, thanks. For now.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Now, I had several things I wanted to bring up or find out about, but I'm going to call it down and bring some of them up at the next meeting. The Shira Court issue, that whole deal we've been talking about, I'm on board. I think we need to put, just tow them. Forget the no parking signs, put some towing signs out there. And I brought this up, we're talking about the 7 homes that are being built out there. I brought this up when the comp plan first reading was to be passed, that we needed to put some kind of moratorium or something on these major constructions until we get our LDC and everything in compliance. And Mr. Shirley said that he didn't think that was going to be a problem when people bringing stuff forward. Well, it's a problem. You look at our weekly report and it's slam full of people amending their development orders left and right. It's longer than ever. These type of projects need to be put on hold because you can't build a house with sleeping 36 people and parking 4 cars. I don't care if it's for a wedding or what, you still can't have it. And all that needs to be fixed and changed. But anyhow, I'll get on that more later. The thing about the homeless people, maybe Captain Payco can help us on that. I think didn't Fort Walton pass some kind of ordinance where they had to be sleeping under some kind of a structure that eliminated a lot of their problem?
The only thing I'm aware of is in the city parks, and it talks about protracted lounging. I know that there have been some issues on the constitutionality of those, because you may have somebody that goes down there with his family and he's not homeless, but decides he wants to lay down on a bench. And you got to treat everybody the same way.
So they haven't passed anything recently, because I know they've had a huge problem with this, and I was just trying to see if they had passed some kind of ordinance in Fort Walton that, it's working for them, but apparently not.
Yeah, I'm not familiar. Where we've had our successes is getting the private property owners to give us trespass authority. The property on Main Street, like Mr. Dixon mentioned, we ran into a problem where that property owner was just very difficult to get them to sign that letter authorizing us to remove the people from the property. The owner lived in Tennessee, was confused over which property we were talking about, but we eventually got that letter and we've removed everybody from that property. Cool. Right now, the majority of the complaints we're getting is on the harbor area, where they're going down there and they're hanging out. And I met one gentleman last week that he commented to me that he heard while he was in the state of Washington, that Destin has a area that you can walk up and down and drink and not be harassed by the police. So that was kind of the reverse effect of having that festive marketplace.
I noticed that there were some tents set up. This kind of concerned me, and that what was going to be the Dollywood, or that strip of property across from what was the Alexan and all that, where there's trees in the park. There's trees. There was a car that had somehow gotten around the barrier and was on the cement side. The car was here, then there was the row of trees, and there was 2 tents set up right behind the trees that you could only glimpse once you went around the bend. And
Those people were trespassed from that area.
okay, so I mean, obviously it's spreading, and they're going to different areas trying to see where they can get away with it. I guess, yeah.
What we find is when we move them from one location, they just move to another. Some of the local organizations will actually give them a map and show them where these vacant parcels are. They give them tents, they give them sleeping bags, and do what they can to help them out.
Thank you. Another thing I had was, we brought up, Mr. Dixon brought up the boardwalk. I believe they was out, either today, yesterday, and the boys have been down there pounding the nails left and right. I mean, it's ridiculous what's down there, but they have been down there, and they marked a place today that I think the person you're talking about tripped and fell. That is on a parcel that is not deeded to the city, but has been talked about here recently. That's in the plans to be deeded to the city if things go through. So they are working on that. I know we all got the email about all the dogs on Noriega Point. And it is being a problem because back in 9/21 of 15, I brought it up, I witnessed 13 dogs on Noriega Point out there. So I don't know what we're going to do about that, but that is being still a problem and getting worse apparently. And the rest of it, I think I'm going to wait till the next meeting. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
You're not going to ask about the BI and the park negotiations?
If we've got loose boards, tell me, we can get that fixed. Is that where the complaint came from? I don't know.
No.
I think that's where they marked it. I think there's yellow duct tape down there on the boardwalk.
I'll get there tomorrow. You'll have a hammer in your hand.
Have your people get with my people and.
We'll get that one resolved.
I'll give you a real quick report. I know while I was missing that a letter was sent out by the fleet and a letter was sent out by BI and is it Incorporated or LLC? Inc. Okay. Anyway, I didn't want to create any confusion with the council that we're not having any success with our negotiations. I believe it's moving along. I'm not going to speak for any of the parties. I'm sure we all have a little different opinion of how well it's moving along. But Mr. Shirley and I have a meeting which will involve all parties with the state trust sometime around the 14th, 15th, or 16th following week for a preliminary discussion this month. And I'm hoping that sometime shortly after that, I'll be able to report to you some positive movement in this area and maybe a possible solution. Okay, city attorney comments.
I don't have anything, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Land use attorney, Mr. Shirley.
Nothing here, thank you.
Approval of expenditure for the annual transportation concurrency analysis and biannual multimodal Transportation District monitoring reports. I apologize, I don't know who to turn to on that agenda item.
What we're looking for, sir, is approval from the council to expend $46,473 for the cost of having this traffic analysis done. It's written in our comp plan, and it's also a requirement from FDOT that we do this every year.
Okay. Did Mr. Bagby leave? I have a card for him to speak on this item as well. Please tell him he was called. Discussion? Mr. Dixon. I got you.
This thing is very difficult for me to read. I got to tell you, I did try to look this over, and I did talk with Ms. June last week about this, and I do understand I guess it's required by the state that we do it, and it's required by our comp plan that we do it, but what I'd kind of like to know is how many trips are remaining, and I don't know if this report demonstrates that or not. I did read over it, but I didn't maybe read the fine print, but I think if we're going to do this, we should be able to know how many trips that we have remaining on our corridors, and that would determine whether or not how much more development we can do. I mean, am I wrong in this, or is this what this is doing, or is this a different type of traffic analysis, or what is this? So.
Well, first of all, when Destin entered into a contract with the state to become the first multimodal transportation district, it gave the city the ability to continue to grow without being limited by maxing out the number of trips. But we have, in doing so, we have to quantify how well we're doing. And that means doing the study every year to show how many trips are remaining, how many trips have been used up, whether we're approaching the concurrency thresholds. And so far, we've been able to demonstrate that we're staying below those. So it's if we get to, I think it's 115% of the capacity, then we're going to have to do something. And I'm not sure what that will be at that point, but it may involve or could involve some restrictions on development. But right now we're not close to that. But we do have to measure and keep track of how we're doing and how many trips are available, and how we're approaching capacity, because we've got to demonstrate to the state that what we're doing by providing alternative modes of transportation is helping to take some of the cars off the road, or at least preventing so many from being added.
Okay, I don't know what this report is for, but whatever, we got to do it, but I would like to maybe come in and sit down with yourself or somebody that deals with this, so they can basically, I've been on here for 4 years, and I got to tell you, I really don't remember this, but I'm sure it was done. But I do know that we're have to be bumping up against how many trips we have available left. And I just want to make sure that we don't do something such as allow more to be developed than we actually or legally can't do by the amount of trips that we have on record. And so, you know, I guess I just need to be taught how to read this report, but I really don't see that in here. I don't see what remaining percentage we have left. I don't see, you know what I mean, how many trips total we have left. And I don't know exactly for sure what the trips mean. I do understand their cars and how much they travel through and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know, exactly what it entails. So I guess I probably need to come and sit down and huh? Yeah. Well, but all I'm saying is, and I'm not trying to hold everybody up, I promise you. But what I am saying is that this just seems like a lot of money for something that we're really not using. And I guess if the state requires it, the state requires it. So anyway.
Yes. We'll have our transportation consultants here on Thursday, and they'll be able to very succinctly answer these kinds of questions.
Yeah. I might ask if, I'm glad Mr. Dixon brought this up. I went through that document. I was beginning to wonder if I could read the English language. I don't know what you all do with that document, but it's unintelligible. You can't make heads or tails of it.
Parker can. You just use it to
Well,
rubber stamp the development.
You pretend it actually says something meaningful in there.
Just pretend that you have it at capacity when reality tells you probably won't.
Well, I don't get to make motions or second motions, but
115%. That bothers me, I gotta tell you. Seems like we're at
is there somebody else we could hire to do this that might make
Well,
some use of the English language when they try to communicate?
Mr. Mayor?
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, would it be helpful if staff can arrange to have the consultant that Hank spoke of come and maybe give a report to the commission?
I think we had a report. I didn't understand that either.
Okay.
Sorry.
We've made arrangements with them to be here for the Thursday workshop to explain the report.
Okay.
In terms we can all understand.
Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm on the same page. I think this is just no more than just a gravy train for Renaissance Group. And that brings me to my next question is, why does this not go out for bid? I mean, is Renaissance the only people that can do this? I mean, I'd be more than happy to string some stuff across the road and count cars for $46,000. Are they the only game in town?
They are on a continuous services contract with us. This is just one element of that. There are other transportation consultants out there, but this is the one that's been with the city through the development of what was a fairly new and innovative program. So they seem like the logical choice, but again, if the council wants to go out for bids for other consultants, that's certainly an option you could exercise.
How often does that Renaissance Group, how often does their contract come up for renewal? I haven't seen it in 2 years, 2.5 years.
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that right now. I'll have to research it for you.
Yeah. I mean, I've been here over 2 years and I haven't seen it yet. And I know the Renaissance, they do an awful lot for City of Destin. And to me, this is just a gravy train. And I'd be, when that contract needs to come up, we need to go look for some other people because that's
not much to report for $44,000.
that's ridiculous.
Mayor.
So, that's my comment, Mayor.
Maybe it keeps Tallahassee so confused that they don't bother us a whole lot.
Mayor,
Mr. Morgan.
If I may. Yeah, Renaissance Group has been doing this for us for a long time. I remember going through the original DOs of the Emerald brand from early 2000s, and their name was all over it. So I don't know if we could possibly look for another company because they're tied with a history of Destin that of our period where we overdeveloped. And for $46,000, I guess my question would be, if we didn't pay it, what repercussions would we face? A lack of funding from FDOT? I mean, we're required by the state to approve this. So what repercussions will we face if we don't?
Well, I was kind of hoping that we could talk about this on Thursday. I think it'd be a more appropriate, I mean, because
Yeah.
because Mr. Destin raised the issue of the multimodal directly during his comments several meetings ago wherein the workshop was scheduled. And so this all ties in categorically with that. It ties in with concurrency and the extent to which the city has to have or may have additional flexibility concerning concurrency now that it did not have when this whole arrangement was conceived of. So there may be some options that the city has now that the city has not, that prior to 2011, the city did not have. And so I was kind of hoping, one thing we may want to do is, I love Renaissance, but we may want to defer action on this until after the workshop and then come back to it, if that makes any sense to you.
I'll make that motion to table this issue until
Is that all right?
further notice.
Well, you should make a continuance to a date certain and unless you want to just kill it. If you want to
No,
kill
we
it,
don't
go
wanna
ahead and
kill
kill it. But
I would, yeah, I would like to make a motion to continue this to our next city council meeting.
That's good.
Motion, second, discussion. Not seeing any. Voting. Yes to continue. Unanimous, yes. Emergency maintenance dredging of Old Pass Lagoon channels that require anything. Is that an update?
Again, sir, this is regarding the emergency dredging of the Old Pass Lagoon channel. The shoaling has restricted the width of the channel and it's impaired navigability. It's a new word for me. So staff solicited several quotes, and the lowest, most responsible bidder came in at $80,000, and we are requesting to pay that amount from the city's fund balance account and make the appropriate budget amendments to this 2006 budget. This is a non-budgeted item, but the dredging needed to be done.
Mayor, I brought this issue up a couple of weeks back, so, and I've already talked to Mr. Campbell. They're also going to add in doing some dredging over at the boat ramp to fix a couple of problems over there, so I'll be happy to make the recommended motion. I move that the City Council authorize the City Manager to execute a contract with Panhandle Machine and Supply for emergency dredging of Old Pass Lagoon channel and spoil sand placement on Noriega Point in the amount of $80,000 and fund the project from the city's ending fund balance account and making the appropriate budget amendment.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Braden?
Thank you. This is hydraulic dredging, this we're doing the backhoe?
No, we're doing hydraulic dredging. We'll have a dredge in here with a cutter head.
Okay.
And we're going to pump it essentially to the top of the sand dune that's there. We'll make a spoil area, and the should be no problem pumping to that elevation.
That's all right, thank you.
Councilmember Ramsell?
Thank you. I have a question. Councilman Marlar, you just said that you'd heard that they were going to be dredging over by the boat ramp as well. Is that customary and standard? And
Well, I brought up the issue since I now own a boat and just decided I liked going there every week. One of our ramps over there, and actually a couple of our ramps, the sand is shoaled back up on the concrete area where you can't launch the larger boats. And so usually they try to get somebody to dredge that when we can, and he's willing to incorporate that into what we're doing on the Noriega Point. I think David can explain it a little better than I can.
It's a budgeted item for Parks and Rec, and we're going to, while he's here, we're going to get it done.
got it. Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote.
It's a unanimous, yes, it's approved. City manager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There was a request from a member of the council to do live streaming video for our June 9th council workshop. In the agenda that I provided, I brought to the attention of the council that this is a non-budgeted request, but the current videographer charges $200 per meeting, and speaking with our finance director, we would be able to find the $200 for that meeting. There are some other caveats that go with that, however. One thing is the precedent that it may set for other boards or other meetings to be videotaped, video streamed, which we do not have the funding for. So to take into consideration, if we want to do this on a regular basis, maybe we could have this discussion also at the workshop, the budget workshop, I believe that's coming up in a month or so. Since I put this on the agenda, another issue has come to my attention. When we met with the West Florida Regional Planning Council, who are going to be facilitating our June workshop, and with the understanding from the council that we wanted a workshop venue, we were looking at putting a U-shaped table here in front of the dais. We would be able to then take these microphones and place them on the table, but the table would have to be in a configuration so that the U-shape faced that way. Given that configuration, the video cameras would not be able to get the same type of angle shots that they currently do for the meeting. So you'd have the backs of people's heads, and you'd have issues with seeing who was speaking at the time. So this is just an item that we're looking for some direction from the council, a consensus on whether or not they want us to expend the money to do the live streaming of the video, with the understanding that in the horseshoe configuration, it may not be very clear as far as looking at the video who's talking, and we'll get the backs of people's heads and so on.
I'm not sure if we ought to start with the council person that requested this. I'm not sure that in a workshop what the need for streaming video really is.
Well,
it's a study deal with no decisions. Do you want to lead it off?
Yeah, I think I'll just tip it off. I think it's probably one of the most important workshops we're going to have for probably several years. Public participation is very, very important, and we're going to probably end up packing out this room. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to watch it from home to know what exactly occurred. And I know that there's a tremendous amount of folks that watch these from home. I'm also not terribly wed to the horseshoe configuration. I mean, I think, one, it should be live streamed. It's only $200. We can explore whether or not we want to do it for others at a later date, but I think just have us all sit up here at the dais, and we'll just conduct it as a regular meeting, but it's going to be a workshop, and there's still back and forth. That's my position.
Mrs. Ramsell?
Thank you. I'm the one that actually requested this, unless somebody else did as well. But we have so many people now that are paying attention to what's going on in our meetings and are involved in the process, that I think it's important that we enable them to be a part of the process as much as possible. So I'm obviously in favor of having this videotaped. I don't particularly care where we're seated, how we're seated. That I'll leave that up to the powers that be. I don't care whether people probably don't care whether they're seeing my face at the back of my head. It's probably the words that are important, and the process and everything. But The only thing I'm really wed to is Councilman Destin put it, is the fact that we video it and enable the public to see it.
Mr. Marler?
I'm not opposed to the money. What I'm really opposed to is, it is one of those issues that's very controversial, and I've said this before, and I even wrote an article about it a long time ago about running for council. If you're watching it on TV or on live stream, you can't do anything about it because you're not here to participate. The whole point of the workshop is participation, as Mr. Destin was saying. The more people we get, if it takes that many people to get here, because if they're not here to voice their opinion, as apparently that's why a lot of the people that we've been getting emails about is, then to me, they're not able to speak because they're not going to be able to call us on the phone while we're doing this live stream. And I understand the live stream part, but I think the participation should be here because, again, that's why we're having a workshop. You come here to voice your opinion to us so that we can make decisions at a later time. But watching it at home and allowing social media to make the opinion, it's not going to do us any good. They need to be here to give us, because that could change our minds, not on social media, but here, face to face is where it needs to be. That's my opinion.
Mr. Foreman?
Yeah, I have a slightly different outlook on this. This is a council workshop, and its intended purpose is for us to get ourselves together, to figure out the game plan for this organization, and to make sure that we understand amongst us. It's not, the problem I have with the streaming, for one thing, I know that at least at my house, it doesn't come out right. You can't hear half the time because people are not talking over the microphones and things like that. It's not been refined to the point where it's a top grade performance on the streaming, and so I'm more comfortable with us being able to informally work out our views and differences than I am about what the public thinks at this point. They're going to get there and they'll be here. And in all likelihood, as I understand it on the agenda, they're not going to be included in the discussion until the very end. Am I not correct on that? And so they're not going to be involved in the views that take place amongst the council members. So I just